Hi, I'm Rashonda. I'm the creator of artbyrow.com, where I help hobby artists grow by teaching them how to focus on the process rather than the outcome. I specialize in developing creativity, creating more art in less time, and using graffiti art to generate ideas instead of always wondering what you should be working on. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, subscribe so you get notified whenever new videos get uploaded. Now let's head on over to the art studio and do some drawings. We're going to work on today's tutorial together. Let's head on over. Alright, so in this video, we're going to look at some different ways to draw banners. And there's a lot of different variations you can do with the way you curve the main area of your banner, the way you do the tail ends of it, how many times you wrap the banner around, if you're wrapping it around an object. There's just a lot of different things you can do with it. But they all basically, no matter how you draw it, they're going to follow some basic principles. So I want to show you those now, and then we'll get into some other things in a little bit, but let's just start off with the basics. And I'm going to draw this with the Sharpie today, just so that it's easier for it to pick up on the camera so you can see it better. So regardless of how you draw your banner, you're going to see that you have your main area, and this is where you would put whatever text that you want on it. And you can make this straight, and then you're going to have those tail ends. And typically what you'll want to do is show how that wraps around. So you would have where it folds in, and these would be in a shadow area. And then you're going to have where the tail pieces come out. And then however you want to do your ends. So if you want them to be kind of notched out, or you could have them come out and maybe just one point, or you could have them straight. So when you draw these, you do want to make sure you keep them fairly consistent in the width, because you want to think of it as if you had like a piece of ribbon that was wrapping around something. So you want to try to keep this width and your tails the same. This will be different because it's partially covered up behind it. So you could think about this comes back here and you just don't see this part of it. Same thing over here. These would be connected, but you just wouldn't see them. So you could draw it straight. You could have it curve, which is typically what you would probably do if you're showing it wrapping around something. You can have this piece curved more. And it really, that's not going to change the way the back part looks or the way these tail ends are going to look. And you could have those just come out. They could be pointed at the end, they could be notched in. So you could have that curving, or you could have it where it's going to curve this way. And it's any way you do it, the basic principles of it are always going to be the same. You're gonna want to have these pieces here where you can see the depth of it. It just makes it look a lot more interesting to be able to see how it's wrapping and folding around. And for the purposes of this instruction, obviously I'm not worrying about how neat my drawing looks at this point. We'll get into that a little bit later here, but just trying to show you the concepts of how you would draw this. So basically we're getting, you know, this is pretty basic. This is a little bit more exciting of a drawing. Typically, I don't know that I would use the straight one very much. I do like using these quite a bit. And then the other thing you can do is to make it where it's wavy. So if you're doing the wavy, where it has multiple curves in it, same exact concept, you bring that down. You're going to bring this one up this way. These are your shadowed areas. And then if you want, you can make these wavy. So regardless of how you draw the shape of your banner, the basic elements that you're going to have will be the same. If this is wavy, and you can make it even more, you could have more waves to it. You could have it look like it's wrapping multiple times around some kind of object if you wanted to put a bunch of text in it. So that's the basic concept of how to draw the banners. And you'll have to decide, what you would want to do is whatever it is that you're drawing, you want to decide which style of banner is going to look better with that drawing, and you want it to kind of accent the drawing a little bit, and it should all go together to create harmony in your drawing. You don't want this nice, beautiful, flowing picture, and then if you were to put just a straight banner on it, it might look a little out of place and a little awkward. So you do want to think about how it wraps, and even the angle that it wraps at, or that it curves. So if you have a curved banner around your image, so for example, if you had a banner that was curving around the bottom of something, you wouldn't want to put it this way. It would look more natural having it curve up if it was on the bottom, where this would look more natural if it was up on the top of whatever it is that you're drawing. So you do need to think about a couple of things just to keep them into consideration for your drawings. But you don't really have to stress out too much about the waves or how much it curves. You could have this curve a little bit less. You could have it curve and wrap around more. There's a lot of different things you can do. So we're going to keep moving on this and look at some different ways that you can sort of embellish your banners to make them look a little bit nicer. And we're going to look at some different ways to add color to the banners as well. Right, so now I want to look at some different ways that you can draw your banners to make them look a little more exciting, a little more interesting, add a little flair to them, make them a little bit stylized. And everything's going to follow that same basic idea of having it wrapping around. And there's more you can do with it. You can make the tails curve even more. There's just so many different things you can do with your banners, and it's really just up to you in the style of your drawing and the look that you're going for. And I'm going to have to draw this. I'm doing it with a pencil, so I'm going to try to make it a little bit darker than what I normally would. So if you have a banner that curves, and I'm just going to draw this one curving up. And again, it doesn't matter which style banner you're doing, whether you're doing it straight, wavy, curved. It really doesn't matter. It's the same principles no matter how you want to do your drawing. So you have it, it comes around, it curves. So when you do all these elements, these different pieces to your banner, you can draw them curving a little bit more. Make them look a little more emphasized in how they curve around. But then also what you can do is, this could come around, you could add a little bit of a fold in here. Have these overlap right there and make it look like it kind of folds in. And then do the same thing on this other side. Have it come in, have it fold. And then bring this down and around. You can bring it out a little bit. And that'll just make it look just a little bit more interesting than the way we drew just the basic banners in the first part of the video. You can leave a little bit of space right here, show some thickness on your banner. And then when you draw these pieces in the back, you can curve them a little bit more too. Have this come around, have it curve in, because we want to show a little bit of a thickness here. Because our objects are going to have a little thickness. They're not going to be completely flat. So one of the basic tricks for making your artwork is that anything you're drawing, if you can show a bit of thickness to it, it's going to make it look a little bit nicer. It's going to add a little extra details to it. So you can just kind of play around with how you want to do your drawings. Look at some different things you can do to make them look a little more interesting. And then if we wanted to, we could have this come around and curve again and kind of cover up a little bit of this so it looks like it's curving, the tail ends are curving back around towards the front. So again, there's a lot of different ways that you can do your drawings. We're going to bring that down a little bit so it comes in this way. And then we could do the same thing over here, or if we wanted to, this could just be just one curve around. So it just gives it a little bit of style. And again, you need to take into consideration your overall drawing, what you're going to use it for, and what type of style you want it to have. So this banner, like I said, this one's a little bit more stylized, and that may or may not fit with the type of drawing that you're doing. So you need to think about what you're doing with your drawing, what type of a feel you're trying to get with it, or, you know, what the purpose is of your drawing. If you're doing something cutesy, then you want your banner to look a little bit cartoony, cutesy also. So I'm going to show you another way that you can draw your banner. So, and I'm doing these, they're kind of curving the same way, but it doesn't matter how you do your banners, if they curve up, if they curve down. The concepts are the same no matter how your banner's curving, or if you make it wavy. The concepts are all the same on it. But the other thing you can do is, so if you have your basic drawing of your banner, I kind of like having these folds in here. I think it adds a little bit to them. It makes it look more like it is a fabric, like a soft fabric, instead of something that might be stiff. So what you could do is make this look kind of tattered. Kind of reminds me of, I don't know, like maybe something you'd see on like a pirate drawing or something, but you can add some little tattered pieces on here. Make it look like it's a little old and worn. And again, it's going to depend on the style you're going for with your drawings. You don't want to add something that's kind of beat up and torn looking if you're doing maybe like a softer or a warm, fuzzy kind of drawing. But I just want to show you some different options. Get some ideas flowing. So the other thing we can do is for these tails, we can get a little crazy with these. They don't have to be always neat and tidy looking. They can be a little bit ripped up. They don't have to always be perfect. And you just want to keep these same, think about the same elements that we added where it curves around. You're going to see this back side. And then when you're adding your color, you're finishing this up, these would still kind of be shaded out this way, maybe not as much, but up here where it's close to this front part, these are going to be shaded. And then we can make this look a little imperfect over here too. Bring these tail ends out. So again, I'm just trying to give you some different ideas, some things to think about. Try to think outside of the box a little bit. Don't feel like everything always has to be perfect or the way you see it. What I always suggest to everybody is to take something that you see like a step-by-step tutorial for it and change it up, make it your own, see how much you can push it, put some different variations in with it, see what you can do, make it your own. There's a lot of different ways that you can bend this around and fold it and do the ends, and just so much variation you can put into it. So there's a couple different ways just to make them look a little bit neater, a little more interesting. Change it up a little bit. And with drawing, if you want to start coming up with your own styles and designs, the best way to learn how to do that or to develop that skill is through repetition. The more you draw things and the more you experiment, you'll start developing those skills to come up with your own unique and original designs and drawings. You do that by pushing yourself a little bit, getting out of your comfort zone, and just trying new things, trying something different every time. So I think that's it for this demonstration. And then the next thing we're going to do is I think we'll go ahead and add some color to these and show a couple different ways that you can use colors on them. You can use markers, colored pencils, or probably with banners, I think maybe the best way to color them might be a combination of markers and colored pencils. Again, that's something that you could experiment with. Try out both. What looks better? Does colored pencils make it look better? Do markers look good? Do we need a combination of the two? So let's go ahead and add some colors to these and see what we can come up with. All right, so I went ahead and added an outline to the banners, and I just used a black Sharpie pen. You can use whatever you want. Brush pens work really well for doing outlines, so you can get some nice line variation with your line weights. But you also, if you use a brush pen, it takes a little bit of practice and it takes a little bit of playing around with it to get used to how they work and how to get the variations and still have control. So the other thing I wanted to show you is that if you wanted to add some shadows with your black pen, to create a little bit more depth, you could do that. So for this banner, I'm going to be using markers. So you can add your shadows in here, which is going to help create your depth. You can do that with your markers. You can do it with the black pen. You could come in here and do some hatching, cross hatching. Again, it just kind of depends on your style and how you like to work, the look that you're going for, the overall look and feel of your drawing and what you're using this for. You don't want your drawing to be really dark if you're going for a cutesy, softer feel to your overall artwork. So your colors and how you finish your work, you want to take some things into consideration so you have harmony in your artwork. So I use whatever markers I've collected over the years. You can mix and match markers. These are all alcohol based. I originally bought Prismacolors when I very first started using markers. And then I was using Bic markers for a while. And you can mix and match brands, it doesn't matter. You just want to make sure if you're trying to blend your colors in together that you test your colors ahead of time and you know which ones blend. So I have these little pieces of scrap paper. I use them to see if the colors are going to go together because I want to create a smooth transition with my markers. So I want to make sure that my colors are going to be close enough together that I can get them to blend without having a lot of really harsh edges. So for this drawing, I want to start with the darkest color because to me, that's the easiest decision to make, is I know where I'm going to have my darker colors at. So what I'll typically do is, since I'm starting with the darker color, I'm going to put the dark color down first, and then I'm going to take the next marker in the series, the one that's going to be a little bit lighter than what the darkest one is. And I'm going to go in and overlap that and kind of blend that in together to soften those transitions. And for this type of drawing, I'm not going to fill it in solid. I'm going to leave a lot of it white, just because in my mind, that's what's going to look right, for a lack of a better word. If you're creating art, then you already know there's really no right or wrong. It's just a matter of personal preference and decision making that goes into it. And sometimes the things turn out the way we want, and sometimes they don't, but it's all just a matter of doing what we think is going to look the best and just experimenting, trying different things. So I typically don't use the colorless blenders, but for this I'm going to, because I want this lightest color to fade into the white, because on this particular drawing I want to leave the main parts of this banner, I'm going to go ahead and just leave them white. I'm going to add some darkness over here, down here in this fold. And again, this is all just decision making for however you think you want it to look. And again, this is where repetition, experimenting, trying different things really comes in handy. Because as you do these and you try different things and you experiment a little bit, You're gonna realize what works, what doesn't work, what you like, what you don't like. And it's probably gonna vary. It's gonna vary over time. As you progress down your path for your artistic journey, whatever your own personal journey is, as you progress and expand and try different things, chances are you're going to keep pushing yourself and you're going to evolve, and what you like today might not be the same a year down the road. And chances are it will not be the same. It's going to change. It's going to evolve a little bit. You're going to develop different styles, whether it's from getting bored with whatever it is you're doing. Maybe you have a certain style that you adopt and you really love, and it's kind of your go-to. You might have some go-to things that you do, and chances are over time you're going to get kind of bored with that, and you're going to evolve and change and do some different things. And that's going to come through the repetition and experimenting and trying different techniques and different color combinations and different medium, different styles, different ways of doing things. You could be introduced to a different artist or a new artist you've never seen before, and maybe you really enjoy their artwork and you start to mimic some of their style and techniques a little bit, or just trying new things, and it's going to evolve. But you're really going to develop by experimenting and trying some different things and different techniques, working on new ideas. So don't be afraid to mess up. If you do something one way and it feels like a total disaster and you don't like how it turns out, it's still helping you get better and grow, because whether it turns out good or if it turns out bad, you're still getting that experience and that knowledge and understanding of what you like, what you don't like, because everybody's different, right? There's no right or wrong way to do your artwork. It's just a matter of your style and your perception of it and your opinion of what looks good and what doesn't look good. So I think that's about it for that. I want to keep some of this white because that's just the style that I'm doing this one in. That's something a little different from what I would normally do, but I think it works well for these banners. I could try coming in here and maybe adding a little bit of color in there just to break that up. And then come in here with the colorless blender, soften it up. Again, you don't really know, there's no actual right or wrong way to do it. If you're not going for a photorealism, then there really aren't too many rules of what you can do with your artwork. And then, of course, if we were using this for a full piece of art, you're going to have whatever your text is in here, whatever this is going to say, whether it says love or whatever you want it to say. Maybe make it bigger and it's going to have more of like a phrase in there. So that's the finished one for the marker. Again, a lot of different variations you could do. You could do different colors. You could do the way that you color it could be completely different. So many different ways that you can add some variation to it. One thing I do want to mention with the markers is that if you're trying to blend them together, you do have to work while the markers are still wet before the alcohol evaporates. If you want to get them to blend in, or like using the colorless blender, you want your markers to still be wet when you use that, or it's not going to be very effective. So that's it for that one. And then I think we'll do this other one with some colored pencils. All right, so for this one, I want to use colored pencils. I picked out a selection of some purples. And again, you can just sort of test them out on a scrap piece of paper, or you could do it off to the side of your drawing just to see how the colors look together. And one of the things that will make a big difference with your artwork is if you use more than one color. So if you want to do your drawings in, just say, so for this example, we're using purple. You want to avoid using just one color. Like if you're using colored pencils, you want to use more than one purple. If you're using markers, you want to use more than one marker. So like for this example, I was using yellow, but I also used some oranges, some browns. You want to use 2 or 3 different colored markers or colored pencils or whatever it is you're using to avoid having your drawings look flat. So for this one, again, I started with where the shadows are at. The way that I usually work on my drawings is that I'll typically start with the most obvious areas first, because it kind of helps build your confidence up a little bit, get you going. If you've been creating artwork for any length of time, you know that feeling of staring at a blank piece of paper, or whether it's when you're getting to the coloring phase of your drawing and you're staring at it and starting to feel a little bit intimidated. And even if you tend to not really get intimidated by your artwork, if you're fairly confident, sometimes we tend to psych ourselves out a little bit, and if we stare at it for too long, then we do start getting those little bits of intimidation start creeping up, and we can start overthinking things and kind of psyching ourselves out a little bit. So by starting with the obvious areas first, it gives us something to get started with and just kind of start building a little bit of momentum up. So all I'm doing is, because with the colored pencils, I'm layering my colors. So I'm starting with the lightest color first and putting it down just a real soft layer. I don't want to put too much pressure. And then so I have 3 different colored pencils that I'm using. I have a light purple, a darker purple, which is this one, and then I have kind of a bluish purple that's darker for my darkest areas. And I'm just softly layering them and building up these different values. And you can go back and forth and rework them. Soften up the transitions a little bit. And one of the things that, so if you start with the obvious areas, especially something like this with these banners, you can color the whole thing in solid, but sometimes with the banners it looks a little bit better if you leave some of the white showing. But then the question becomes, how much white? Where do you leave the white? What's too much? What's not enough? So by starting with the more obvious areas first, you can kind of look at the whole overall design that you have going and then make your decisions based off of just kind of what your intuition's telling you a little bit. So as I'm putting this section here in, because I know this is going to have shadow in it. So as I'm building up the shadow area and I'm looking at it, and you can just kind of go by what doesn't look right. And again, that's personal preference. A lot of this is just your own style, what you like, what you don't like. So I know I want the darker areas back here. I can make this a little bit darker. This little tail end here is going to create a shadow. But as far as the other areas go, so obviously you want your shadow areas to be the darkest. But then as far as the main pieces of your banner go, it's up to you where you want to add some little bits of color to break up these big white areas. I typically don't like having big chunks of solid colors or lack of color. To me, this solid white, so this is how my decision-making process goes. When I look at this big chunk of white bothers me and this big chunk of white bothers me. And that's completely just my own personal preference, my own opinion. You could be looking at this and thinking there's not enough white. And that's what helps create what our personal artistic style is. It's these things that look right or wrong to us. And that's how we develop what our style is. And everybody's style is going to be different. That's what makes our artwork our own and makes it unique. So when I say there's no right or wrong way to do things, obviously there are some things that are going to be considered right or wrong, but a lot of it's going to be just your own personal decision-making process and what you find appealing and what is not appealing to you. So I just added just some slight color down here, this lightest purple. Just to break up that white area a little bit. Same thing down here. Like I said, if you prefer having the big chunks of white, then you can leave more white areas. Excuse me. You can leave more areas that are uncovered. Personal preference, just whatever you think looks better. But I think that's about it for the color on this one. I can zoom in a little bit, pick up those lighter areas. So that's really it for the colored pencil one. You could use like maybe a white jelly roll pen if you wanted to add some actual like white highlights on there. That's up to you. I'm not going to on these ones. I think they look fine the way they are. I don't think the white highlight's going to add much. But again, you would typically have some kind of writing in here, maybe somebody's name or some kind of some word on there, whether it's love, hope, joy, whatever you might put there to complement your drawing. I'm going to zoom back out so we can see both of them. So two different styles, two different ways of coloring them, one with color pencil, one with marker. And again, this is a little bit softer. If you're going for a softer look to your drawing, the colored pencil might be the way to go. It just depends on the overall look and feel that you're going for. So I hope you found this useful, and I will see you in the next video. So how did you do? Hopefully you followed along with the tutorial and worked on your own artwork. If you enjoyed this and you want to get notified of other lessons that are coming up in the future, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and you'll get notified whenever something new gets uploaded. Have a good day and happy creating!